to everybody to the Argentinian event. We are going to present our work during this year under the Cabinet of Climate Change, the National Cabinet on Climate Change. At this occasion, we are going to present 3 sectoral plans that have been developed during this year. First, we are going to have word from the Minister of Environment, Mr. Sergio Berman. Please, Mr. Minister.
Gracias, thank you. Hi. Here we will summarize our work. That is the last year we fulfilled this presentation, how we can translate our NDCs, the process to consolidate and to build these numbers. We make our presentation the last COP in Marrakesh. It was one of the first countries. The first country I think that make this talk. For us it's an honor and a privilege to make Argentina a reference of serious and consistent work about numbers and about the compromise in the Paris Agreement. We bring also the message of President Macri that the Paris Agreement is alive, that we need to fulfill the compromise in concrete actions, that the negotiation is not to come back to the formal discussion. We need to go forward and to make this kind of compromise in concrete plans and actions. Right now we will present to you the last year with the National Climate Change Cabinet. President Macri is leading the cabinet. This is a very important thing because it's the president mandate that calls the minister to sit together, and then having this crossover approach. At least we are talking about a national cabinet that they are dealing with climate change, but the truth is that we are dealing with sustainable development. And for us the framework is not climate change, it's to fulfill the 17 goals that we share, that climate change is an indicator, and now we are going to the roots of the problem, how we can change our manner to do the things and to change our paradigm, what the business means, what natural resources mean, and the focus what human dignity means to sustainability. Now we will show you the programs, the plan, and we will be open to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Next in the list of speakers, we have the Undersecretary of Climate Change and Sustainable Development, Mr. Carlos Gentile. Please.
Good evening. Just before entering each plan, I'd like to tell you about the context of the plan. We started last year with reviewing our NDC. We presented this NDC review in Marrakesh, and the NDC was composed by more than 40 measures, and these measures are covered of different sectors. So this year we bring the plan that contains not just the measures, but the roadmap to implement each of these measures. We decided to build 6 plans, sectorial plans, and now this year we are bringing 3 of these 6 sector plans, but these 3 plans are responsible for more than 90% of the emissions we avoid to emit in 2030. Those plans are energy and climate change, forest and climate change, and transport and climate change. During this year and the next year, we plan to have the 6 sectorial plans, and with these plans we will have a national mitigation plan and a national adaptation plan. And together those plans will compose the national climate change response plan that we are expecting to have ready at the end of 2019. So what is important to say is that all the plans and all the strategy, it was a really participative process. Into the process, we have the ONG, NGOs, private sector, academy, and of course the states, the provinces involved in this very participative process. So I'll give you the seat to tell more about each plan.
Thank you, Mr. Gentile. Now, thank you for the overview look of the work of during this year under the Gabinete. Next, we are going to take a deeper look on each of the sector plans. First, presenting the energy plan, we have the National Director of Policies and Programs of Energy Efficiency, Mr. Marco Vergel. Marco.
Thank you. Our Energy and Climate Action Plan provides an integral approach with mitigation measures both on the demand side and on the generation side. This plan accounts for 70% of the national determined contribution, providing 77 million tons of CO2 avoided. It was, as the Undersecretary said, carried through a highly participatory process involving NGOs, private sector, and also provincial states. The most important mitigation measures from the supply side are renewable electricity generation and also large-scale generation through hydropower and nuclear. From the demand side, energy efficiency in residential sector lighting and public street lighting, and also in appliances, accounts for the majority of the reduction. To highlight the current situation, our energy matrix is based mainly on hydrocarbons. You can see in the central figure that natural gas and oil represents the highest component of the matrix. In the left side of the figure, our electricity generation is mainly based on thermal power plants. The sector accounts for 28.7% of the emissions of all the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. Next, and finally, presenting the last two sectoral plans on forestry and transport, we have the National Director of Climate Change, Ms. Soledad Aguilar.
Thank you, Lucas. I will now present the transport sectoral plan. We worked this with the Ministry of Transport. Unfortunately, they are not here today, but I'm presenting on behalf of both of us because it's a joint sectoral plan that we built in the auspices of the National Cabinet on Climate Change. So the focus of the transport plan is that transport is a sector that will continue to grow in the future as the country develops. So the focus of the work has to do with improving mobility, reducing fossil fuel consumption, improving the effectiveness of the efficiency of the transport sector as a whole, and improving infrastructure and reducing its vulnerability, because we also add the adaptation component to the transport sector. The points of intervention in the transport sector have to do with, we focus on three main areas of intervention: urban mobility, freight transport, and intercity mobility. The transport sector as a whole is not so large in terms of reduced emissions as the energy sector, which Marco explained. It's smaller, but all these measures have been developed in the past few years. So, and being a growing sector, we are very interested in ensuring that we can take them into efficient implementation. So the reductions that are planned have to do with urban railway prioritization, low emissions mobility promotion, public transport promotion. Those represent a big part of the measures. The other big part has to do with efficiency improvements for freight transportation, because going to the next one, and then I will come back, For the transport sector, most of the emissions come from the trucks that carry our goods throughout the country. So 90% of the emissions from transport sector come from freight, and that is why we have a focus on improving the efficiency of the freight transportation. This gives an idea of how the transport sector in Argentina is composed. It represents almost 15% of our overall inventory, so it's an important sector, and also it's a growing sector. 95% of the emissions come from the freight transport within the transport sector, so that is why, going back, more than half of the reductions have to do with efficient freight transport, and this has to do with educating the drivers, improving some technologies, because we have very old trucks, so also renewing trucks, and in general improving all the road transport by truck, which is where most of our emissions are. The plan also was developed including the private sector and the NGOs, and includes monitoring specific indicators to see how we make progress with the roadmaps that are set for each of these measures. So, going to the next one is the Forest and Climate Change Action Plan. Within the National Cabinet on Climate Change, we have a table of forests and agro and forestry, agro and forests and forestry also. But for this year's work, since we had a lot of work already underway with our national UN RED project on native forests, this topic went a little bit faster than the agricultural side. So for this year, we decided to divide the work of the groups so that the native forest part could be fulfilled by the end of the year, which was our target, like the minister said, and we managed to comply with our own objectives. So this plan was based from broad consultations with civil society, indigenous groups through all the country. We had regional consultations all over the country, and from these groups they decided to focus on 6 strategic pillars for the plan, and those pillars then are translated into 5 main reduction measures. As a whole, you see that the plan has a very high incidence in our national contribution. It represents almost half of the contribution, so it's a very important sector. And the measures that reduce emissions focus on conservation of native forests, sustainable forest management, and silvopastoral activities, which mostly has to do with sustainable cattle and forest management, to have this combination of cattle in the forest managed in a sustainable way. Some restoration of ecosystems and lost forests, fire prevention, which is also very important for Argentina, for the forest in the south, and avoided deforestation. So all of these comprise our plan for native forests, and of course it's based on the National Native Forest Law that provides the legal background for the part that is in the main contribution. Those 27 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent have to do with the implementation of our native forest law. This is just to show that mostly deforestation represents 15% of our overall inventory, but as you see in the graph, it's going down in the last few years as a result of implementing the forest law. So we hope to continue this trend to be able to resolve the issue of deforestation in Argentina. Well, this is the end. I wanted to, if you want to download these presentations, they are in www.ambiente.gov .ar/planes-sectoriales. And if someone wants, I can